Hello and welcome to Afternoon Tea with Karen. I'm going to have another celebrity special with Nova Sobieralski. The first bit of footage is a few days ago in Geelong.
Talking about a rainbow crossing in Geelong since 2017. It's been a long time coming. In 2017, that's when we formed Geelong Rainbow in response to the marriage equality campaign at the time. 6 years down the track, we finally have a permanent rainbow crossing here in Geelong. To have that public, visible sign of support from council and a public, visible rainbow crossing people can go to is a really positive step. Geelong.
So, if I can just bring your attention to the person who is 5th from the left in the purple dress, waving the flag above their head, and the person on the far right with the large flag behind the person with the Socialist Alliance t-shirt on.
Today, the context within we find ourselves, the queer liberation struggle, we're in the midst of a massive backlash targeting transition, targeting gender nonconformity and youth autonomy. But what does this mean for us as activists, as queer people in Australia specifically? With me to discuss these questions today is Nova of Queer Liberation Boorloo, and Chloe Holmes, a committee member of the Victoria Pride Lobby.
Well, the speech I have today was written, it initially intended as an introduction to Queer Liberation Boorloo. So who we are as an organisation is a group that has solidarity and class consciousness at its core, and fights for trans liberation using a diversity of tactics, but focusing on trans liberation rather than piecemeal change. So I really set out to answer the question, what does queer liberation mean today? I believe we need to turn back to liberation politics to forward the material interests of queer people today. Much of queer politics today focuses exclusively on winning the legal rights of queer people. This has affected both how organisations present and defend queer politics and the cultural attitudes of queer people. And the cultural attitudes of queer people towards politics. Many organisations focus almost exclusively on the legislative rights of queer people. And any campaign that seeks to change the minds of ordinary people is instrumental to achieving legislative change in Canberra. We might have a say, but ultimately, politics is done in Canberra. This approach to politics makes a lot of sense from a liberal perspective. It deals in tangibles. You can see the success of a campaign in the legislation both in Canberra. It goes without saying that legislation has a huge material effect on queer people. I think liberation politics should be understood not in conflict with, but in contrast to this sort of piecemeal queer political approach. Indeed, groups such as liberation groups such as Gay Liberation Front in Britain never had never ignored the piecemeal campaigns. For example, they called for an end to discrimination in the workplace and the legal system, and for queer sex education in schools, all of which would not amount to queer liberation, but are still good piecemeal gains. Liberation politics instead focuses on queer oppression, on the cause of queer oppression. Queer oppression is understood as being a consequence of patriarchy, colonialism, and ultimately capitalism. These so-called ills are still with us today, and, so we contend, they will be for as long as capitalism remains. This is also the reason that queer liberation is, and always must be, class-conscious. The relationship between queer oppression and patriarchy is perhaps most obvious. Queer people commit the crime of not following traditional gender roles set out for us. be it in the form of gender deviance or not fitting the model of a patriarchal atomic family, a man, a wife, his kid, and a dog. These gender roles are enforced through violence. And I'm sure, regardless of your gender or sexuality, we've all experienced ridicule, bullying, or punishment for not fully meeting our gendered expectations. The way you sit, the way you talk, what hobbies you enjoy, gendered expectations have something to say about all of it. These expectations are also enforced on transgender and non-binary people. We're placed by the so-called gender critical between a rock and a hard place. Any behaviour that doesn't conform with our gender identity is evidence that we're merely masquerading, playing dress-ups. But any behaviour that conforms to gender expectations for our gender identity is reinforcing patriarchy. The goal, of course, is for us to detransition, to return to normal, to stop being so correct. Being trans, of course, is who we are. It is not a political choice, it is not a costume we put on, and detransition for so many of us means death. Many trans people aren't radical. They want to pass. They want to conform to the gendered expectations of their identified gender. And why would we expect any different? Indeed, the pressure to conform to these gender roles is so much more powerful when not doing so could mean death. We cannot and should not hold transgender people to a higher standard of radical gender deviance than our cisgender counterparts. The relationship between queer sexuality and gender is also not a simple one. In academic circles, we have created distinct categories of homosexual, heterosexual, and bisexual, but the experience of being queer is far too rich and nuanced to be captured in a simple categorical fashion.
And finally, Nova, can you please talk to us about the issue of trans women in prisons and what the trans community is doing about that?
Yeah, so one of the major issues that's happening in the trans community is that when we are thrown in jail, because obviously everyone will eventually, within any demographic, there will be a certain population within jails. There isn't consistent legislation across Australia in terms of which jails trans women should be sent to. When trans women are sent to the wrong gendered jails, when trans women are sent to men's jails, we face far higher rates of violence and are often put into solitary confinement with the justification of it's for our own safety, and that may even be true. But it's still a horrible place to be, a cruel and unusual punishment. I do believe that using solitary confinement as a means to ensure someone's safety, it would have to violate human rights law, surely. And this is commonplace within the Australian prison system. There is currently no legislation one way or the other about how the courts, about which jails trans women ought to be sent to in WA. So it's decided entirely on a case-by-case basis. And sometimes it goes well and sometimes it goes poorly. And it's one of the many issues that is completely off the radar of the media in terms of a trans rights issue, a trans rights debate. Like, this is trans rights, this is costing lives.
Well, thanks for that, Nova. That certainly is a sobering point to finish on. It truly is the case that this is an important issue. In fact, as it says on my t-shirt, you probably can't see, but queer pride saves lives. Lives are at stake, and that's why we will always be supporting trans rights here at Green Left. But that brings our show to an end today. I'd like to make a special thanks to Nova and Charlie, both for joining us and being our guests. I'd like to make a special thank you to you for tuning in. As I said at the beginning, if you do like our work, please do become a Green Left supporter. It is the best way you can support our work. You can also make a financial contribution on Patreon. And also, as without paying a single cent, you can support our work simply by sharing this video or the podcast, telling your friends about it, help us to build the audience, share the other work that Green Left produces. And until we see you next time, goodbye.
And that's a bit about Nova. I shall put those full things into a playlist so you can watch the whole lot. Also, because I know more about the Australian prison system than Nova does, I have done a short reaction video to that last piece, which I will also put in the playlist. Okay? So, until next time. Oh, hang on. Forgot the end slide. See you later. Bye.